There is an affordability crisis in hockey right now for youths. Essentially, what I want to get at with this video is I just want to bring to the forefront of kind of hockey discussion. Why is it so damn expensive for young kids to have an opportunity to compete at higher levels? Where does this come from? So we'll start with barrier to entry into hockey. Just in general, to play hockey is expensive no matter what level you're at, no matter how old you are, what your skill level is. It's expensive. You're talking about, on average, NHL caliber players started playing at the age of, let's say, 4 to 5, and that's pretty early, but even three sometimes, some as late as 7 or 8. On average, this isn't all of them, just there are obviously outliers. On average, they started at 4 or 5. So you're talking about 4-year-old children, 4 years old. You're already paying out of pocket extra costs out of your already non disposable income that's kind of flying out the door at this point with today's economy. You're paying for them to just step on the ice. You're paying already. Now you have to buy them gear. They need skates, socks, shin guards, pants, shoulder pads, jerseys, elbow pads, gloves, helmets, sticks, and the occasional sharpening. And that's just that those aren't even the reoccurring costs. If you want to talk reoccurring, now you're talking about skate sharpening, you're talking about sticks, you're talking about upgrading gear every year as your kid gets older. Obviously, when they're young, they don't need a ton of gear, but you're talking about these reoccurring costs. It is unreal how expensive it is just to play hockey. It's $10 for a sharp, $400 for a stick nowadays. Obviously, I'm talking about higher level kids at this point. $10 for a sharp and $400 for a stick. A new helmet comes out, that's $300. More expensive skates come out, depending on what level your kid is playing at and how old he is. That's probably $1,000. It's like $1,080 right now for a pair of Hyperlight 2s, and that's not if they're custom. You got custom sticks that can cost like $500. You have new age runners that are like $80 to $100 if you get a pair of, like, I don't know what they're called, but Hyperlight 2 skates, the newest ones, they're not even compatible with old steel anymore. You have to get new steel. They're called like the T's or the X's or something. This new set of steel costs $100. So now it's $1,100 just for the skates. It's unreal. And I just want to talk about how just to play hockey is so damn expensive. At my local rink, it's $22, I believe, for an hour. And that is it. It's unreal. If I skate 4 times, I've spent what, $4 short of $100 just to skate 4 times. It is crazy. And that's for stick and pucks, that's for drop-ins. And luckily, the community and the rink do their kind of events where they're like, okay, come teach your kid to play hockey for free. You can do this, you can do that. And that's great. But if your kid is anything older than, let's say, 10 years old, that's when your wallet really starts to leak. It's kind of unreal. And then, so your kid's grown up. Let's talk about cost to improve skills. So your kid wants to get better. Obviously, the number one way to get better is to do it, to keep playing on ice. I'm going to talk about actually playing later on, but right now, let's say off ice only, you have goals, shooting pads, pucks, like synthetic ice. You have like green biscuits, orange biscuits, whatever you want to use. There's targets. There's tons of ways to do it, and they all cost a ridiculous amount of money for no reason. I'll throw some up on the screen right now. You can take a look at them. These are just a couple of items that you can use that are pretty popular and how much they cost. And if you look at it, sure, maybe one or two of them aren't too pricey, but aggregate, when you combine them all together and then you contrast that with how much skill you're really going to gain, unless you're a freak that's using like an old Sidney Crosby style washing machine and shooting pucks into that, you know what I mean? But realistically, how much skill are you actually gaining? If there was, let's put it on like a points value. Let's say skill is from 0 to 100, 100 being NHL and 0 being you've never played before. If your kid's at a 50 and he wants to get to a 60, how many points skill wise is your kid really jumping up by stick handling off ice for a couple hours a day? Realistically, maybe one or two. Is it good practice? Absolutely. And should you do it? Yes, you should, because you can't expect to get better on the ice only. You have to put the work in off the ice. However, how much skill are you really gaining from stick handling off ice? Probably not a ton. A lot of kids are using a stick handling ball, and that's great. They're moving around, they're stick handling, they're practicing holding to the left, holding to the right, maybe a couple of moves here and there. But until you actually step back on the ice and then do everything you just did and implement that into your on ice game, you technically haven't made any advancements yet. Maybe your hands got a little faster, sure, but in a static environment with no congestion, no contest, nobody's roughing you up, nobody's trying to push you off. It's just you stick handling on this tiny little Bauer sheet of synthetic ice or shooting some pucks. That's cool. How far away are you shooting these pucks at? Why is there, like, there's no goalie unless you have a sibling that's a goalie or something. There's no targets to shoot at unless you have those. It's a whole thing. And realistically, all of the off ice or all the gains made in the game of hockey are made on ice. Most of them, anyways. Obviously, there's outliers and off ice practice is important, but realistically, other than, let's say, basic strength training, most hockey players are focusing on ice development, and that segues really well into the cost of on ice development. So, how do you get better on ice? Well, a really good way to put it is you get better by playing with people that are better than you, right? If you're scoring 50 goals in your single A league, are you really getting better or are you just showing off? You're not really getting better. Obviously, you're always getting better in terms of experience. Like your skill level increases over time with experience. But if you're not the same way in the gym using heavier weight, your muscles will never adapt. The same thing on ice. If you're never playing people better than you, then you're never learning new tricks. You're never identifying, keeping your head up, looking at the defense, seeing what higher level players are doing. You're never getting better defensive resistance or offensive resistance, depending on if you're a defenseman. You need to play with people better than you. So let's talk about AAA. If your kid's playing single or double A, if you're lucky you started playing triple A when you're like 9 or whatever, like that matters. But let's say you're 14 years old. At around 14, if your kid is really good and he wants to play at a higher level, you kind of have to be playing triple A. That's just the reality of the situation. I don't think people are aware, on average, how much triple A costs to play and the exclusivity of it in general. And this is different up north. Obviously, I played hockey down south in Texas. But you go up north, and there's a little more value, I think, on high school hockey or prep school hockey or whatnot. Down south, nobody gives two cares about high school hockey. It is fun to play. It's fun to watch, sure. But there's no scouts at your local high school game on average. Obviously, everything I'm saying is with a grain of salt. But club hockey is where it's at down south. Let's say you live in Dallas, where I lived, and you want to play AAA. There's two things. Number one, who are you going to play for? Number two, how are you going to pay for it? Well, who are you going to play for? Your only option in all of North Texas is Dallas Elite Stars. All of North Texas. The closest team is 3 hours away in Houston, the Houston Knights, and I only found like one article on them. I couldn't really tell you if they exist. I'm pretty sure they do. I don't have any information on them. I just know that they're the closest team, and they're 3 hours away. I'm not driving 3 hours one way 4 times a week to practice plus a game. That's just insane. Plus, you got to be there early, so you're talking about, like, that's a whole day of travel just for practice. Because you got to go down there, you got to get ready, you have to do your on-ice warm-ups, maybe some film, maybe some on-ice practice, then your warm-downs, you might do strength training. There's all this stuff you have to do with the team, which is good stuff. Like, it matters that you're participating in these activities, and that becomes more than just a 3-hour trip. It becomes a whole day ordeal. God forbid you have school that day because you're 14 years old. It's just, it's unreal that there's only one option, and that's just Texas. You look at Arizona, there's more teams, but you got the Coyotes and probably maybe some offset of the Runners or the Road Runners or something. But there's tons of states that don't have access to multiple AAA teams. There's only one. I mean, I couldn't tell you if there's a AAA team in Montana or not. God forbid you were unlucky enough to be born in Montana, you're screwed. Like, there's no options for you. Or Florida. You have the AA Solar Bears. I'm pretty sure they play AAA teams sometimes, but are you playing on a AAA team? No. You can go down and play Florida Everblades. You can play Junior Bolts, I think. I don't know if they're AAA exactly, but the amount of AAA hockey in Florida is almost zero. There's a lot, and it's all down south. If you live in, like, Orlando or Jacksonville, you're kind of screwed. Sorry, buddy. You just don't have access to that. And that's not even considering the cost. On average, again, on average, I emphasize this, it costs anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year to play AAA hockey. Just let that sink in. $15,000 per year just for your kid to participate on this team. Not guaranteed to win games. You're not guaranteed to advance to a higher level. You're not guaranteed scouting. You're not even guaranteed a winning season. You're just guaranteed to be on the team if you made it in tryouts. It's unreal, and that's registrations exclusively. Then you talk about travel costs. That's another 5 to 10 grand maybe. You're all in. There's the entirely possible and possibly even likely chance that you're going to pay almost $20,000 for your kid just to be on the team. That is unreal. And God forbid he's not the best on the team. Now the coaches are looking elsewhere. You know what I mean? Your kid's getting the practice, sure, but they're focusing on the kids that are good, obviously, because from a coach's perspective, and this is understandable, you want to be the guy that coached the next NHL superstar. People, you want that so that people come to you and say, hey, you coached him. Can you coach my kid? They're trying to make money, and I totally get that. But if your kid's not a superstar on the Dallas Stars elite, he's kind of getting overlooked. He's participating in the practice, yes, but the coach isn't looking at him while he executes the drill and giving tailored, specific advice to that kid, but he is doing that for the superstar. The same way the goalie coaches have specific coaches looking at them. There's a forward coach, sir, or an offensive coordinator type of role, but they're not looking at your kid unless he's one of the top guys on the team. It's just not, it's realistically not going to happen. And all of that comes with a $20,000 price tag, and it does not come with a guarantee for anything. The only guarantee is that you'll be on the team if you made it. Like if you passed the tryouts and you got selected. That is it. I just think it's unreal, the price tag for AAA, for the amount of like get back that you're getting. You're getting back nothing except the promise that the coaches are inevitably going to be making to you that, your kid's going to get scouted or he'll get seen or you'll play in these exclusive tournaments or whatnot. That's great. If your kid's not at that level yet where scouts are going to like pay attention to him, then you might as well not even be on the dang team. It doesn't make any sense because you're paying $20,000 for what? For your kid to show up and play on the fourth line? It's just ridiculous. And there's so many kids out there getting snubbed, absolutely robbed, because they just can't afford to pay it. There's probably some kid growing up in the middle of Montana, let's say, right now that, let's say, fate is real, if you believe in that kind of thing. He is destined to play in the NHL. He will never play for a AAA team in this scenario because he can't afford it. He doesn't even show up to the tryouts because a buddy of his told him it was fucking 20 grand to play last year, and now the kid's not even showing up to tryouts. Little does anybody know this kid's the next Wayne Gretzky, but he's never going to play AAA because he couldn't afford to. Or, I mean, I hate to say it, but at least in my experience, the kids that grew up poor are usually the kids with the best work ethic. They work their butts off. And so these kids are being robbed of opportunities to play at a higher level because they just can't afford to. So why is it not cheaper? And anyone that plays high-level hockey will tell you, if you're good enough, you'll play. Let's say the price tag's $20K and you can't afford it. If you're good enough, the team will make sure that you play for them. If I show up to Dallas Stars tryouts and I blow it out of the water, I knock it out of the park, but I can't afford it, they will find a way to make sure I can afford it, whether it's sponsorships, whether it's like a payment plan kind of deal where you're paying it off like a fucking car loan or something, or some sort of that, like some in that nature, they will make sure you play. Why, instead of doing that for the one or two kids here and there, why don't they just do that anyways? Take the sponsorship money, take the angel investor money, whatever it is, the alumni, the donations, and lower everybody's price tag so that those kids do show up. Whether they make the team or not, now you have a larger talent pool, so you have more competition, you have better prospective selections. Like as a coach, I would want to look at more kids and have more options. You know what I mean? As a coach, I would hope that kid from Montana shows up so that I at least get to see if he gets to play. Because the alternative is the price tag is so high that you never even see him and you never get to hear about what kind of player he could have been. You know what I mean? And he just got snubbed because you decided to charge 20 grand for a year. It's unreal. And you're probably playing on this team for like 5 or 6 years. If you start at 13 or 14 years old, play all the way up to U18. I mean, you're not really going to U18 if you're going to the NHL, but some of them do. That's 4 years times 20. That's what? 2, 4, 6, 8, 80 grand you just spent for your kid to play AAA, and there's no guarantee at all that he's going to go to a higher level. No guarantee. The only guarantee is that he'll get ice time in terms of practice and maybe some time on the fourth line. It's just unbelievable how expensive it is, and I can't stand it. I wish, and I'm hoping that the purpose of this video is to kind of spark a little bit of discussion, that someday we will figure out a way to make this more affordable, whether it's lowering the cost of ice through more efficient energy usage to cool the rink, or sponsorships or the NHL teams that these AAA teams are affiliated with, paying for the season, whatever they have to do, but making it more accessible. Because even on a non-competition level, I find it utterly ridiculous how inaccessible hockey is for a lot of people. Some people just don't hear about it, and that's fine. But the people that do hear about it and choose not to play because it's too expensive is unreal. No kid grows up and has never thought about playing basketball. No kid grows up and has never thought about playing football. You just go play for your high school team. You can't do that with hockey. You just show up and try out, and then they smoke you and they say, "Hey, by the way, it's $5,000 to play." It's unreal. You would never hear that in a high school basketball game. If I tried out for the basketball team in Dallas at, let's say, Frisco High or something, if I made the team, I will play. And that is it. The school covers the cost. Usually. Obviously, there's outliers, but the school covers the cost. That is not a realistic option for high school hockey. At least, unless you're up in the north or some location where the high school sponsors the team, which is great. All the schools I've ever played at, the school did not affiliate themselves officially with the hockey team. They represented the school, they wore the crest and all that, but the high school did not condone that as like an affiliate of the high school. That's how it was in my Dallas high school when I went. We played under that high school's name, but we were not affiliated with that. I still had to take gym class, even though I was playing hockey 4 times a week for the high school, because it didn't count as gym credit because it wasn't affiliated as a sport. I find that ridiculous. And there's so many really, really good skaters that will never, ever skate because of that exact barrier to entry. I find it ridiculous. And I hope that we can kind of address that someday.